Hello out there, I'm the oldest nerd, and it's time once again for Talking Movies with Professor O, and you don't know how close we came to not getting it done this week. Hello,
Woo!
O, how are you doing today in breezy Oklahoma?
In Breezy, Oklahoma, this is one time where Breezy, Oklahoma, and Breezy, Texas are got a lot in common. I know it's chilly down your way too.
It is, and it is going to warm up by the weekend. But we were hit by a sudden wind gust and temperatures that went down to what we thought we'd had enough of already, and apparently that's happened to you too.
Absolutely, but we just need that chilly Vienna feeling
Yeah.
where it feels cold in the
Yes,
sewers.
that was the perfect time to
See our
watch the
breath.
third. Yeah, it was the perfect time to watch the Third Man. And did you see the Oscars, by the way?
I missed them. I hate
You,
to say
you
that.
didn't miss much. I think this is the first year that we have not had. Usually, we try to watch two or three of the nominated pictures before the Oscars, and just didn't get to that this year. And
I missed the ceremony. I did get to some of the films.
very good,
Frankenstein with Del Toro. Whoa, it was
really.
fantastic. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking to see some of the winners before too long. A lot of them are streaming now, so not such a big problem anymore. Anyway, I have one problem I have with the Oscars is that they inevitably complain about how long it goes. The Oscars go so long, the Oscars go so long, and yet the situation where best short film, one of them didn't even there was a tie, and
Right.
they gave time for the first person to say thank you, and the second one they just played off. And it hits me that I never have in my life watched the Oscars to see song and dance. They
Right.
believe that you want the Ed Sullivan Show because, it's still on the air and people love that kind of stuff. So let's do it on the Oscars and get all those useless acceptance speeches out of the way. It's why we watch the Oscars. And
Yes,
yet,
to
and
see.
yet, the reason it goes so long is because they've got to stop it and have Barbara Streisand sing. That's nice, but I mean, do we need it? Do we need to have the production number where they have all the dancers up there recreating a song out of the movies? I mean, can't we just give the damn awards
And
and
the
it would make
idea
that?
is,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
you
would
might have
watch
actually
that.
seen that movie with the song and dance, and it was
Right. I
better
mean,
in the
if
movie.
people actually went to see the song and dance, Ed Sullivan would still be on the air.
True.
I mean,
True.
really.
That's amazing how the Oscars, a variety show, people don't even know what a variety show is
No.
anymore, and that's what they are. I never even thought about that. That's what they are, and in doing that, they for a few years they had squeezed out some of the biggest awards like
Yeah.
cinematographer, editor, major stuff.
Yeah, let's move it to a diner down the road and do it 3 days earlier and don't
Exactly,
televise that part. Yeah, and it
exactly.
used to they at least would give a little piece of tape saying here's some of the people that received the awards at the diner now down the street, and they didn't even do that this year. So that's my rant for the day. But
Well, but it makes you realize that really story is number one because the third man and cinematography. What does cinematography have to do with the third? What did cinematography add to the third man? I'm kidding.
everything wasn't it?
Everything.
There is a joke that the director of this film, who was just incredible, Carol Reed,
Right.
was gifted a spirit level after the wrap up by the crew, because the cameras were always held in what's called a Dutch angle. You
That's
know what the Dutch angle is, so maybe you can
That's
explain that.
right. Sideways, the Batman,
Yeah,
but yes, a spirit level. And so a spirit level, I've always I never thought of it called a spirit level. I read that too. And so it's just a level. I always just called it a
yeah, it's just a
level.
level.
He's
Yeah,
gifted with a spirit. Because, yeah, and that's, yeah, one cinematographer thought he overdid it. But then others just marvel at the Dutch angles. And after a while, you just realize that's part of the language of the film. And then
yeah.
you realize if he did it badly, that would be jarring. Instead, you just kind of absorb it. and after a while it becomes it's not jarring at all. It's just part of the way it ought to be
But it
in
is
that film.
interesting. It is interesting. There was no Steadicam at that time, and so they
No.
really couldn't do handhelds for what they were doing here. And so to give this idea of more of a documentary look, which is I think is what Carol Reed was looking to do, was
Yeah.
to do this Dutch angle, and it worked. I mean, it made everything seem a little askance as the filming in Vienna, which they did almost totally on location,
Right.
is an example of just how to use the location and make it a character.
Right. Absolutely. Make it a character. And that was interesting that the reception in Europe. I know we'll get to all sorts of,
Ah,
but the
we yeah,
reception in Europe, um, they they viewed this as the best American film. Actually, they kind of viewed it as not just an American film, but an international. It really was an international film. I mean, yeah, you're looking at Corda and
yeah,
Carol Reed and Selznick, and so it really is an international film. And they felt like this is a film for our times. It highlights Europe, but it didn't try to hide the post-war malaise, the sense of
yes,
malaise or the damage. Whereas apparently a lot of films in the 40, I have mainly stuck with, I'm thinking of films 47, 47, 48, you're thinking of American noir films. But
yeah.
apparently when they made films in Europe, they would kind of try to hide or just belittle some of the damage, like, oh, we're reconstructing, all is well now. And this film says, no, it's not all. And Europe actually loved that. They liked seeing themselves as they were. And the Italian neorealists were doing the same thing at the same time with like Rome, Open City, and Bicycle Thieves. The Italian neorealistic movie was showing it didn't hide the rubble and the malaise and the depression and frustration of Italy at all. And this is, Italy seemed like the only country kind of doing that at the time. But here it spread to Vienna, and and Europe loved the film.
Yeah, except for Vienna itself, I don't think that they liked the way they were presented at that point. But
That's a good
now,
point.
of course, there's a theater there that shows this all the time,
All the
and
time.
they do regular tours of the sewers, which you wouldn't think of that as being a tourist spot, but it is. And
Yeah.
they have special police patrols that now go and patrol the sewers to make sure that they're safe, because it is a good place for villains to hide out that they all know about now.
And Orson Welles did not want to go in the sewers
Well, he
to
didn't.
shoot. That right. That they filmed that at Shepperton. They rebuilt, they filmed part of the sewers in the sewer system, like you mentioned. Most of it's in
Yeah,
Vienna, but
everything except for Wells, and Carol Reed tried to tell Wells that it's just wastewater. It's not sewage, and Wells wouldn't believe them. He believed that there would be disease or whatever down there, and he'd want anything to do with it. So yeah, they
right,
built a half set, I understand, in Shepperton to
right.
in England to and they did it at a smaller scale, so that they had to do all the tight shots on Wells in there, and
Right,
everything
in
that
the
was
half
done
set.
right, and then matte painting over that. But everything else was done actually in the sewers, and all the other actors and the double for Orson Welles, they put him in a padded suit and send him down. So that's why you see so many of it shot from behind, and the only
Right.
time you see his face is an extreme close up. And the
Yeah,
extreme close up was
Guy
needed because
Hamilton,
there wasn't enough
future
set
James.
there to make a wide shot.
Right. And Guy Hamilton, future James Bond director, was running around. He was the assistant director, and he was running around. Like you said, they had to give him a little extra padding to
Yeah,
as he was the stand-in. Carol Reed's fingers comes up
out of the grating, yes.
out of the
And
grate. Yeah.
and while we're talking about James Bond, let's see, Sergeant Payne, who is kind
Yes.
of the moral center of all of
True.
this, became M in the first 11 James Bond pictures.
Gosh, just totally memorable as and yeah, and very different character. Yeah,
Yeah,
as M, but he's much more rigid and but here he is. He enjoys westerns. You could put down a good western and pick it right back up later if you want to. He was, and you nailed it. He's the moral center of the film.
Yeah, and I believe that was one of the problems that they had in with Selznick. They needed money from Hollywood in order to distribute the film, and so they got Selznick to come in and throw money into it. And as a return, he wanted a different version for the American audience. I didn't realize that until we started researching this. And what he had was the opening that many Americans have seen, which is Joseph Cotton narrating the first part of it. In the British version, it's Carol Reed that does it. Also, the billing changes. It's they put Selznick top billing in the American version, Selznick bottom billing in the British version, as far
I
as a producer.
oh
And yeah, and then there's the tendency of Holly was shown to be much more of a drunkard in the British version than he was in the American version, and
right.
then so there were a few changes along there, more time in the sewers in the British version. About 11 minutes was cut for the American version, and much of it was to make Holly look more heroic and the Americans to look better in the film than the Brits would have had them. But
Right, because yeah,
yeah,
Holly is definitely not the moral center. You
no,
kind of expect that he might be on your first viewing. That here he is, his friend. That he's going to stick by his friend. His friend has been killed, and he's being pinned for a murder, or no, pinned for a racket. That
well, they have a quote on here that I love. That
ah,
Calloway says to him, "I told you to go away, Martins. This isn't Santa Fe. I'm not a sheriff, and you're not a cowboy. You've been blundering around with the worst bunch of racketeers in Vienna, your precious Harry's friends, and now you're wanted for murder." Holly says, "Put down drunk and disorderly too." Calloway says, "I have."
they did not get along at first. They,
No, but it was great chemistry between them, though.
Yeah, there really was, and yeah, and that's I've seen I haven't seen a ton of Trevor Howard films. There's another Carol Reed Trevor Howard film. Oh, it'll come to me, but that very different role for him. But this is, I think, a very feels like a different role for Trevor Howard. In a lot of times he's a little bit more quiet, maybe a little more sensitive, but he was perfect in this role. And yeah, and, and I love, yeah, and in that, I think somewhere positioned around that conversation you had was where Trevor Howard basically tells Major Payne to punch to punch Holly Martins, and he does it in the kindest way. Yeah, because Holly Martin, and it's almost like Holly Martins at that point needed a punch to
Yeah.
just get off his high horse so they could do what they needed to do, and he even almost denied hitting him. No, looks like you fell down. Whoops. But
But there's a lot of humor in here that I used to think it was all at Holly's expense, but it's all through it. Every time they make a reference to Holly's novels, first, the sergeant says, "What I like about it is you could put it down anytime you want to,
right.
and not miss it." And that, of course, a book you can't put down is somewhat better. But so it was a very
but he
left-handed compliment.
but the but he appreciates the role of that
Yeah,
kind of pop culture where you can put it down. It's like there was a function for that kind of culture in his life. There's high culture, where you can't put it down. But and then this comes from an interesting article I'd read talking about the third man of culture. There's the third man of politics in this film. Europeans, Russians, and Europe, or kind of somehow being a third man working their way in between the Americans and the Russians, and Europe was a third. This article even talked about a third man of culture, high culture, and kind of Zane Grey pop culture or lower culture, and where does Europe, what's the new version of this in Europe? And Europe at the time was concerned about American imperialism when it comes to culture after World War
yes,
II, because none of our, we had all the means of making movies. None of our infrastructure had been damaged, whereas Europe was picking up, from the starting over basically with production facilities, not a lot of infrastructure for making culture. and they're worried about and in the times of America being so strong and in some respects, in a lot of respects, standing up for Europe, but are they going to get taken over in the process? Their culture, their politics, and so that yeah, you see a lot of how Europe emerges as a third man.
Yeah. It's there's a lot of layers in this, I think, which is what keeps
Yeah,
it being such a rewatchable film.
yeah,
And I love just the beyond the idea that they make Holly represent the United States during the war. They were reluctant to go in, and then tried to take over, and then found that they needed everybody else in order to actually come to victory. And
right.
they put the Brits as being kind of aloof and cynical. They put the Russians as being overly bureaucratic, and then they don't really give Lime an international kind of identity. He's just the evil in the world right now.
The evil of that's a great point. What kind of evil, the opportunism, the complete lack of morality, the evil in the world right now, and yeah, especially in the wake of this void, you got a giant, what is it, power seeks a void, and
Yeah,
you've got this giant void after World War II, and there's Lime, murking his way around, being an opportunist, horrible opportunist. What, and talk
he talked
about
about how much money he could make, and Holly says to him, a lot of good your money will do you in jail." Lime says, "The jail's in another zone."
right. And I know we're cutting to a big scene in the Ferris wheel, the Prater, I think it was called, and in Vienna,
Yeah,
beautiful. What a place to shoot, and it's completely rewatchable. They go up to there's Lime and Holly and Harry. Names are so similar. And
yeah,
in fact, is they keep mispronouncing. They keep calling Holly Harry. Even Anna does that.
yes.
Anna Schmidt does that. So, but as they're going to the top, then it becomes more and more threatening, and
Well,
of
it
course,
goes back. It goes back to the beginning of the film where Holly calls Calloway Callahan, and he did that on purpose. He did it on purpose because he knew about the animosity between the Irish and the English, and so he called him by the Irish version of his name rather than the English version. And he snaps back, I'm English, not Irish," and in a way of, "I'm not with that scum."
eggs.
and and so it kind of and so the um, mistake with Holly's name is the same thing. That's It's equating him with a criminal, that he would rather not be seen as that, but rather as the hero. And it's somewhere in there that
But
Harry
yet,
Lime says to him that the oh goodness, yeah.
you looking for the
Oh, Holly, you and I aren't heroes. The world doesn't make any heroes outside of your stories.
right, right. The lines are constantly blurred into
Yeah.
shades of gray, ambiguity, moral gray areas, and at the top of that, when they go to the top of they're at the on the Ferris wheel,
Yes.
and Harry Lime, those lines where Harry Lime says, "Look at those dots down there." Doesn't he see them as people? Look at those dots down there. If you could
Yeah.
get 20,000 pounds, if one of those dots disappeared, I'm really paraphrasing. If you've got those lines,
Would you really feel any pity if one of those dots stopped moving forever? If I offered you 20,000 pounds for every dot that stopped, would you really, old man, tell me to keep my money, or would you calculate how many dots you could afford to spare? Free of income tax, old man, free of income tax. The only way you can save money nowadays.
I mean, those lines, we're talking 80 years from that movie, at least. And those lines just resonate. Yeah, I
Those
guess we have about
actually,
80
yeah,
years.
yeah,
Those
and
lines
those were
just,
not written by Orson Welles. There's certain
yeah,
people who are saying that Orson Welles wrote all his own lines,
No,
and he did not. He wrote one part, and that was what's
the
called
cuckoo clock speech.
the cuckoo clock speech. After all, it's not that awful. Like the fellow says, in Italy for 30 years under the Borgias, they had warfare, terror, murder, and bloodshed, but they produced. I've messed up
The
my.
Renaissance.
Yeah, hang on. Yeah, we go. But they produced Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and the Renaissance. In Switzerland, they had brotherly love. They had 500 years of democracy and peace. And what did that produce? The cuckoo clock. That's one of
It
my
was a great line.
favorite speeches.
You know, it is, and the cat, you know, it's funny. The crew got fed up with Orson Welles because he's a little bit of a prima donna. You know, and apparently he does have upper respiratory problems. He really didn't want to go to the sellers, and it probably was to the movie's benefit to make those that like the half stage at Shepperton,
Yeah.
and they cut it together beautifully. But that way you could get some good close ups of Orson Welles, and it
What's
worked
funny
out.
is that he's only 5 minutes of the film. The film
Yeah,
is all about him, but he's only on screen for about 5 minutes,
yeah.
and of course they made that count. It was this is the one I tend to think of in outside of the film itself. Nobody thinks in terms of human beings. Governments don't. Why should we? They talk about the people of the proletariat. I talk about the suckers and the mugs. It's the same thing. They have their 5 year plans. So have I.
Yeah, and those lines absolutely they resonate because you could be talking about a very rich corporation owner looking at those dots who are his workers, or you could look at governments like you just mentioned. We've all seen that. We've all, I mean, everybody deals with that moral situation. At what point does a person become dehumanized and a dot? And you are going to, you know, and those are morally gray areas that we live
And
in.
and he
Just
questions his morality there when right after that line, Holly says, "You used to believe in God." Harry says, "Oh, I still do believe in God. Oh man, I believe in God and mercy and all that. But the dead are happier dead.
what was the last line? But the what?
The dead are happier dead. They don't miss much here, poor devils."
That's how he wraps it up. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, oh, oh.
I mean that is about as far in the cellar as you can get, as far as
Nihilism.
yeah,
Yeah. Wow. That yeah, and yet it's not like the movie, there's nothing about if anything, the movie, that kind of reasoning in the world we live in today is more it happens more than ever. I think
yeah.
it's worse now than it was 75 years ago. It just yeah, it's yeah, and at
Well,
what
it says
point
a lot about the human condition. I mean, there are
yeah,
people out there who are thinking, if I can make money on it, I don't really care what else happens.
yeah,
And that's gone throughout history, has it not?
yeah, totally, absolutely, absolutely. But oh, and that's just one layer of this film. That's just one area of this. The film, it lives in that morally gray area, but there's
Yeah.
different ways that it lives in it too. But oh, and to be on the Ferris wheel for that, and just incredible. And so yeah, Harry Lime. We first kind of the name Harry Lime. Yeah, Joseph Cotton is there to meet his friend. He thinks he has a job
Yeah.
now. And when we first see the film, I know you and I are thinking, oh, okay, he's unemployed in America. This will be an adventure. Holly Martin's Joseph Cotton has no family. What an adventure! Go to post-war Vienna. What kind of job could it be? Now we know that job was probably rooted in some sort of criminality because every time Holly talks about his past with Harry Lime, it gets more smarmy. It gets, you know,
Yeah. What's surprising about that is he doesn't seem to recognize it either. Oh yeah,
right.
we had a lot of fun in college. We used to, burn down people's houses, but that was nothing. And
Exactly. At first, you're thinking it's cheating at cards. They talk about
yeah,
stealing. They talk about selling tires as if you're selling used tires that are bad tires, and you know they're bad tires. There's all sorts of things that you go, well, that's bad, but it's not truly criminal. But the more the film goes along, you start to realize how criminal did Holly, what activities were they really involved in? And Holly,
Yeah.
when he went to Europe, he was expecting something, a criminal enterprise, some sort of maybe not killing people, not penicillin, not selling bad penicillin to
No.
kids,
He was
but
talking about maybe tires and coffee and sugar and things like that. And
right,
and he threw that out at Callaway in the beginning, thinking, why should anybody worry about stuff like that? Which, yeah, obviously he was thinking that would be what he was part of.
right. And then we find out instantly that kind of following the plot just a bit, because we find out instantly that, well, Holly, your friend Harry, you're 10 minutes late. He tracks him down to the apartment. He's trying to find him at an apartment and at where he lives. And the porter, I think, says, well, they just you're 10 minutes late to the funeral. And so then the porter somehow knows that there's a funeral. And I mean, as he would, the porter of Harry's apartment knows
Yeah.
what. And so he goes to the funeral, and all of a sudden, and you're really feeling for the man, because there he is. He's expecting to meet this guy that's going to give him a job. Now he's in a place where he doesn't know anybody. There's no job, and his best friend is dead.
Yeah.
And then he sees a girl at the funeral, a young woman, and realizes that there's some sort of connection there. And I think that's where I think that's yet another place where Trevor Howard, Major Calloway, picks him up. I think in the Jeep at that point. Does he take him away from the funeral? I may be
That's at the end of the film. At the end of the film, well, he takes him away both times. In the
both
beginning, he
times.
says, "Do you need a lift? I have a car." And
Right.
he takes him back to the police station. They're at a hotel, and gives him some military money, a plane ticket, and a and
He's
some
going to
money
send
that
him off.
he can spend if he doesn't drink too badly on the over that evening.
And that's where they have, I guess, the first real confrontation. And Holly says, you, here I am confusing
Yeah.
him. Holly says, you're besmirching my friend. He's no way he would be involved in a racket like you're describing or killing anybody. I'm gonna assume the mantle of one of my heroes in a Western and rescue my friend, rescue the
Yeah.
reputation of my friend is what I'm gonna do. And so then he sets off to do that. One thing, as I love to think, nobody talks about this, but I bet you've thought about, is the actual mechanics of, okay, so we know, so Harry's dead. That's what, so how did Harry die? He died when a car hit him. And that's one thing. Holly's doing his investigation. We
Right.
died when a car hit him, and there were two people, or was it one, or there were
It was two people that
people.
were supposed to that were carried his body across the street, and then he died there. That's what he was first told.
Right,
And the first time, Holly is kind of odd. By why didn't you just take him into his apartment, which was on that
right.
side of the street? And so he then of course the porter says that there's no way he could have lived the way the car hit him, and he looked very dead.
Was
And
it right?
so then that puts Holly wondering just what it is, and of course the porter having seen a third man.
Right.
So who is this third man? Why isn't anybody talking about him? He may have information that would be useful to the police.
Exactly.
And so that's where it all gets rolling. And so everybody is so friendly to him. They all want something.
Right.
And we figure that Calloway from the very beginning, if he knows Harry Lime, he wants to know just what he knows and what he's into. Maybe that's the nature of why he called him over. And then of course you have Dr. Winkle and the Bulgarian and the guy with the dog, and
Is
all
it
of
is it Kurtz? Okay, right.
yeah.
Kurtz was Kurtz with the friend of Harry.
He was the
Was
first
Kurtz,
one that Holly encountered, who
and
gave
was
him
he the
the
one across the street that felt guilty? He said Harry saw me, and he started coming across the street.
yes.
And so we know that he's coming across the street and then
And
gets
his
hit.
last words was, "Take care of Holly." And of course, there couldn't have been any last words.
There couldn't have been any last words.
Right.
And the doctor can't confirm anything because he said he was dead. I don't
He
know if
wasn't. He wasn't there. He wasn't there at the time of the accident.
right.
He was just brought in dead. So
right. And Popescu, that right was also on the other side of the street. Is that correct? With standing with the
Presumably,
both.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
there were two people that took his body back across the street,
So
and the Dr. Winkle was not the third man. So there was another that was the third man.
that's exactly right. Dr. Winkle was not the Winkle was not the
Winkle.
doctor.
There's a lot of misdone names in this show.
Exactly. Well, so so how do you think mechanically this actually? So what did the porter see? Getting back to you, because they needed a witness. They've got
The
to. They've
porter
got to
did not
stage
see
this.
the porter did not see the accident. He
Okay.
heard it and then went to the window and saw three men taking the body across the street.
Right.
We find
So
out later that the body was the person who was their agent at the hospital who was stealing the penicillin,
right. Right.
and
That
they
was
killed him because they never explained why they killed him. Possibly
too,
just
too
because
much.
knew too much,
Yeah.
and they were being narrowed down on, and so they wanted to make it look like it was Harry that died, and Harry, of course, was the third man.
Right. Right. So Harry runs. I'm thinking of just staging this thing. Harry runs. Orson Welles has got to run across a road of traffic. That's got to do that. Probably got to have a car involved. I mean, somebody driving a car to, or I'm thinking some thud. You would think that so
Somebody
and
was
I can
driving. Somebody was driving the car. It could have been Dr. Winkle
that could have been a Dr. Winkle, and you
because it
kind of
wasn't an
wonder.
accident. It was done on purpose. And so
Yeah, yeah. I'm just
you
thinking
have
staging it right.
yeah, you have the dog guy across well, probably not across the street. You have the dog guy. You have the Bulgarian, and then you have the 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 hospital guy, and then you have Harry. Harry might have
Right.
been driving the
And
car.
basically a heap of bodies. So you have
Yeah,
a car, some sort of a thud. I'm thinking, I don't know how they did the thud. Did you think of the
and
thud of
so it
the?
was no doubt Winkle was the person who identified the guy as Harry, knowing it
Exactly.
wasn't. And so, I
Yeah.
mean, they were all in on it. And so, what
Oh,
they're trying
totally.
to do is basically tell Holly that there's nothing happening here. And in fact, the
Oh, yeah.
same thing that Calloway was telling him: there's nothing happening here. Get on the plane, go home.
Yeah. Nothing to see here.
Don't play policeman here.
Yeah.
And he says, I'm going to stay until I get to the bottom of it. And Calloway says, death is at the bottom. Leave that to the professionals.
Yeah, and as I know you and I both love conspiracy films and
Oh yeah,
detective films. Have got to be one of your favorite genres. I'm now inferring over the
caper
years of
films. This
covering.
is kind of the obverse of the caper film. This is when the caper
Yes,
goes wrong, and
you are a caper maestro, my friend. I mean, I know you. You love your and detective. So yeah. And for some reason, I just had to get it in my head. Reconstructing truly, how did they pull this off? So you're right. A heap of bodies, and the dead body goes away, and whoa, it's dead Orson Welles, who could quickly be identified. And then hauled off for sure, because they don't want to keep him. He's alive. You don't want enough to see his face, but he's got to go fast. When
yeah,
they haul him away, and then the porter sees something. There's a line that the porter had said. What's interesting, and this goes in with the blurring of names, the blurring of language. Because we hear a lot of German, we hear Russian, we
yes.
hear
The most of the extras were people that were in Vienna. They weren't professional actors at all. And so the balloon man, for instance, was just somebody they saw in Vienna. And most of the others were, if they were speaking English, they were speaking it phonetically because they didn't speak English. So
exactly.
there was a lot of that. So
and,
except
and then
for
we get
just the
and then we
main characters, yeah.
Right, and then we get snippets as viewers. We get snippets of German that are not translated. They're translated. Anna might translate it, but we actually heard the original German. We don't know what it is till Anna says what it is, or the character rephrases what they say in kind of broken English. But this is kind of interesting.
Oh,
Anna's
she's just mad, that kind of thing. The cleaning lady who's going on
exactly.
this big rant, she just says, "Oh, she's upset."
And this is where it's kind of interesting for German speaking viewers. They love, believe it or not, They love this in East Germany. The Russians allowed this is just before the Cold War got so hot that the Russians allowed this to be seen in East Germany. And so for German speaking viewers, many of the extended dialogues, such as Anna's landlady ranting about the invasion of Anna's chambers by the foreigners, to the porter's regret to having told Holly so much, because the porter ended up regretting it cost him his life how much he told Holly.
Yeah.
He said a line in German, and that's what the porter said is in German that we don't know as viewers. You would if you were German, you'd understand what he said. He says that's what one gets for being friendly to foreigners, is what the porter actually says. It always highlights the ambivalence the locals feel at the presence of the foreigner and the culture he brings with him. The porter puts it well when he threatens to forget his Viennese charm if Holly doesn't leave immediately.
Yeah.
And that's the one, you're kind of, in some respects, you kind of think, well, Holly's not a great detective. I mean, he keeps asking questions to his credit, but he's not just a terrific sleuth in
No.
going after these things. He bumbles around, he drinks too much. And the one thing, speaking of ambivalence,
But what's interesting about that is that he is almost as bad as Calloway is, who's already decided what's happened himself. They're both on opposite sides of that, but
right.
He's convinced that Harry is guilty and doesn't really care
Right.
of how the case fell together, which of course was absolutely the wrong thing to do because Harry wasn't dead. And
Right.
Holly saying Harry was innocent was wrong, but thanks to the fact that they were pushing against each other, it revealed that Harry was alive and that Calloway better get to work and do some real police work.
And right, and you hate that the one thing that somebody you're thinking, well, nobody really paid a true price except for the porter who was killed because he also knew too much. And
Yeah.
that is one thing Holly does cause by his bumbling around.
And of course Sergeant Payne.
Right, yes, of
Once again,
course, Sergeant
the
Payne.
moral center of this film, and he's the one that has to take a bullet when they finally go after Lime.
Right, right. And one thing that kind of the kid, there's so many little, and it's a great point about Major Payne being with the center, and he also dies exactly. And one thing, this little Han, the little kid with the ball, which is just an amazing part, having witnessed the argument between the porter and Holly. And this is kind of where this benevolent relationship. I'm reading from a
Yeah.
really good article. It's starkly and incorrectly, no, ironically represented in the crowd suspicion that Holly may have killed the porter. That is a spooky part of the movie when the crowd is blaming Holly Martins for the death of the porter. Little Han, having witnessed the argument between the argument that we referenced just now between the porter and Holly, implicates Holly in the porter's death. The crowd outside the porter's apartments becomes restless, and Anna translates for Holly. They think you did it. As Holly flees, we know of his innocence, and at the same time, we know of his complicity. His dualistic approach to finding the truth has played a clear role in the porter's death, after all, as it did in Major Payne's death. I mean, ambiguity all over the place. It just, and even to the point, one thing that kind of is a stunner in the moral gray areas. At first, Anna, and we know absolutely, viewers, you just got to watch this. I know sometimes we'll take us through the plot a little bit, where maybe if you haven't seen it, this one is so complicated, just you got to watch it.
You really do. and let me give it a tip. You can find this on YouTube. The whole film is available on YouTube in the restored Criterion version of it, which is the British version, which has 11 minutes more. If you think you've seen this film before, you've never seen it like this, because mostly it was in old public domain copies, which were grainy, and you didn't see what they did with the lighting. Part of the problem was that they didn't have enough lights in Vienna or enough electricity to run many of them.
Right.
So they only had like 3 lights that they brought in from London that they lit most of the outside, and they watered down the walks and roads in order for them to reflect the light better. They've done that in a lot of stuff. They did in Casablanca. Never rains in
Right.
Casablanca, but they had wet runways so that it would reflect the light well. But
Yeah, so
but
that, yeah, it
yeah,
yeah reflects, adds highlights and reflects, and just yeah, you're right. Like three lights, and the mind boggles. Three lighting instruments. Now they're big. They're probably putting out 5,000, maybe even 10,000 watts of light.
yeah.
So it's major sources, but still only three of them, and that's just unbelievable. Because on a Hollywood set, you might have 8 to 10 of those at any one point,
Now, this is something
and
else I would ask you about.
or more.
In your knowledge of film, most of the time that night scenes are filmed, they're actually done during the daytime and they use filters, right?
Right, day for night. You could
Right.
close
In
down the
this film, they
aperture.
did a lot of night photography. They actually used,
Right,
powerful lights in order to be able to light it, but to be at night when it was at night. And of course, down in the sewers, it didn't have good lighting down there, I imagine, and so they had to do that as well. But
exactly, and it's so
the,
important.
the lighting, the camera work, this stuff by itself deserved awards.
Absolutely, you would be fascinated by the film if you tuned in 30, 40 minutes into the film and started to see these night scenes and the shadows. You would think, what am I watching? Just the atmosphere that is created. And it is a huge film noir had been around for a while. It's like 48, 49 when this film was made, but this had to just add to the impetus of film noir as like, yes, let's shoot at night, and these characters are morally gray. I mean, all the things that come out in a film noir, it's all there in the third man, and even there in a different way because of the way it was shot, representing these nationalities and the cultures. Yeah, and the one thing that's ambiguous too is, as Anna, we haven't talked about her too much. The woman that Harry's girlfriend is in love with Harry. Holly really desires her, wants her, and falls in love with her pretty quick. Falling in love with your best friend's, your dead best friend's girlfriend is fairly
Yeah.
morally gray, and
Yes,
he's
she
unapologetic
tells him
about it.
at one point in the film, "You should get a girlfriend."
Exact. Yeah, he's completely unapologetic. And then he sees the evil that Harry has done in two ways. First, he looks at more like a police detective, things that proves these are Harry's fingerprints on this penicillin racket. He's connected to penicillin vials, and but then when he really is sold over, when he really buys and see the horror of it, is when they go to the hospital at the end of the film and they
Yeah,
see the victims. But we never see the victims.
we just see a
Uh,
teddy bear.
oh, we
Yeah,
just see a teddy bear and reaction shots of Holly Martin looking into cribs of where the victims are, and
yeah.
it's incredibly compelling. But the Anna never buys it. She At one point she's disappointed in what Harry's done, deeply disappointed, but she will not leave him.
But she does not see what Holly sees or what we
She
see.
does not.
She doesn't see all the evidence that Holly sees, and we assume from what he sees.
Yeah,
and
she
and uh, and all of that, he has a little extra information, and that justifies what he does, but not in her eyes. And to
right.
that point, she won't even take the charity of a ticket out of town because it was bargaining her for for turning in Harry.
Right, exactly. She would not take the charity. Harry's Holly is actually doing something kind of heroic. You think at the time he's helping her get out of Vienna. The Russians want her. She's Czechoslovakian, and apparently, so the Russians feel like that that's part of their domain and that they should have control over her fate. And he bargains his way, where she can get out. Um, and apparently, I didn't realize this, but there was a coup in Czechoslovakia in February of 1948, roughly
Yeah,
around the time
about
that they're
yeah, 3 or 4 months before the film shot. Yeah,
right. I thought the fate of Czechoslovakia had been sealed in 1945, and there it is, 1948, and that's when it goes fully into the Eastern Bloc, and so that is interesting. That really played into the plot of the film with the her being Czechoslovakian.
yes.
And then so yeah, but she will not take. He does the Harry. Holly does. Here I am doing that. Holly does this courageous thing, and tries to get her out, but she will not take it because
You know,
she
she
feels
makes me think. She makes me think of the girl in Casablanca who is from Czechoslovakia, and where Rick helps her husband win at roulette so they can get a plane ticket to America. and
right.
a different actor altogether because that was the actress there was the director's daughter, but
Ah,
who'd never been in a film before but did so well there. But that's another film.
but still, that's a good comparison of the and so yeah, moral ambiguity. But you mentioned also cinematography. I keep going back and forth.
Yeah.
What's your favorite shot of the film? What is it? Have you got a favorite shot of the film or a favorite reveal, shall we say?
Well, I there's so many good ones. I
Yeah,
particularly like where they're going. Harry is running away through the rubble when
right.
he first sees that the cops are after him, and later they have, of course, Holly and Anna going down this staircase when he's being accused earlier on. When he's being
Oh,
accused by the little kid of murder, and these are actual
yes,
locations in Vienna that were bombed out, and
yes.
a lot of that is, and of course, the sewer scene is interesting. I can see in a number of places where they use the same location to be different places. But for the most part, it was just any place that they had a shot on the streets
Oh,
was amazing.
my favorite two are where the cat goes to
Okay,
Harry's
yeah, you're right.
feet. and
They
the
set up, you almost miss the fact that she said the cat only responds to Harry and the cat jumps out the window.
Right. And runs to these feet that are standing in an alcove, standing in a doorway, but we can only see we can't see anything above the shins. All we see is the feet and the cat at the feet.
Well,
And
yeah, that would
Holly,
have to be the best shot. The big reveal of Orson Welles, where
oh,
Holly is knows he's being followed and starts yelling, and it causes a woman
right,
in an apartment to turn her lights on, which illuminates Harry's face, who gives kind of a smug look as "You caught me, but you see me, but you're not going to catch me."
right. I mean, this is a film student special. I mean, a
Yeah,
student of film, because if you're a student of film, what motivates your lighting? We need, Harry's in darkness. We need some way to reveal who he is. And of course, the woman lifting up the shades, and she's prodded on by Holly. Come out, wherever you are. And she's going, "What is this racket?" Lifts up her shade and raises the light on Harry.
yeah,
Just incredible. My other favorite shot is the balloon guy who
yeah.
apparently was a balloon, actually sold
Yes,
balloons.
yes.
My mind boggles. They're shooting at night, and a drunk balloon salesman has too many balloons left over from the fair, which happened like hours before, wanders upon, and they use him, and it was great.
And they had, of course, Sergeant Payne buys the balloon.
Buys a
Once again,
balloon.
moral center.
Moral, it's right because the poor guy can't really. Yeah, it's just and oh, what a difference. Oh, and that's the other thing. Before we see, you wonder how they cut that together. Come to think of it, when you first see
Well, it
the
looked like there was
shadow.
a giant coming through the way they did the shadows there,
And somehow they
and
discovered that in shooting. They realized they set up the lights like a property guy walked in front of the lights, and cinematographer sees the shadow that
yeah,
anybody in the crew makes and
right.
goes, "Oh my God, we got to use these shadows. They're incredible." But that looks like Harry Lime's shadow until all of a sudden we realize it's the balloon guy, and it
Yeah,
doesn't even. And I wonder if they actually. I think they just cut it that way because it ought to look like
yeah,
Harry Lime. The tension's building up. This is at the end of the film when Holly's being used as bait to bring
yes,
Harry out in a coffee shop, and Harry knows he's going to be there. Do you think? And it's the balloon guy instead of Harry until it is Harry. Harry, of course, we never see his shadow. He perfectly shows up. All of a sudden,
right.
poof! Surprise! There he is in the coffee shop. Do you think he was gonna? It's probably that obvious question, but I think he was. I'm guessing he was gonna kill Holly at that point. That Harry had the gun, and he was gonna You think he was that was the motivation at that point, or
No, no. I think that was the motivation when the people wanted Holly to go in the building, and he said, "No,
right?
I want to meet Harry, and I'm gonna want
Exactly.
a very public place." He was certain that
Right.
they were going to try to kill him, and I imagine they would have.
Right.
No, I don't think Harry wanted to kill him at all because he indicated that on the Ferris wheel. That
It's true.
he opens the door and he said, I couldn't kill you any more than you could kill me because I mean we've
Right.
been in this together for a long time. So I think that he gives the proposition, and of course Holly goes high and mighty, no, I'm not going to do this, and he does his we're not heroes kind of thing, but said if you should change your mind, we'll let me know, we'll meet. And that's where I think that he was absolutely going there to think that he was going to have a new partner.
I'll be dark. That's well, okay. And what throws that off? Because what throws that off is
Was Anna
when
being there? She shouldn't have been there.
she shouldn't have been there. And then she says, and again, and this is where, just like you pointed out, she is not going to be bought off by a passport. In fact, is now she's furious at Harry. She says, when she discovers Harry in the cafe as a decoy, she says, honest, sensible, sober,
Holly.
harmless Holly Martin. Holly with a silly name. In other words, his betrayal of Lyme is no different in its fundamentals from Harry's betrayal of her.
Yes.
When she discovers Martin's loitering around the train station, this is the part you were talking about, as she is about to be transported outside to the Russian zone, she needles him to the point where he admits he swapped his services to apprehend Lyme for her passport. Then she says, "Look at her. Look at yourself." She says to Martins as she leaves. They have a name for faces like that. And I'm thinking this is back in by the train station. She says they have a name for faces like that. This author really did a super job. She's a
Yeah.
it's an old article written in 2000, but her name was Anna Marie Schultz.
Schmidt. Oh, okay.
And she says that when we at this point we can her face is illuminated and with shadowing the eyes, the rest of her face is illuminated. She says one can only conclude that she means Janus face, and this is Martin's profile we're looking at, and
Okay.
she's kind of implying that he's Janus face, which according to the dictionary defines deceitful and having contrasting aesthetics, deceitful and two-faced, Janus face. Anna's words combined with that profile shot offer us both possibilities. It's kind of like a commentary, one might say, on the European conception of the U.S. popular culture and the presence on their soil, but two-faced, Janus-faced, and that's an interesting idea there. But definitely, she sees Harry as two-faced, and she's not going to stand for it. And yeah, and but yeah, so when Harry comes along, he's thinking they're going to form a partnership. But what
Yeah.
prompts him to pull out the gun in the cafe is maybe she reveals, hey, you're a police informant, that Holly is a police informant. And at that point, do you think Harry is not going to shoot Holly, but Harry realizes the game is up because he pulls out his gun and of course he's got to run. And it
Yeah.
looks like for a second he might
He
shoot
obviously
them.
thinks that there's somebody hiding in there with him. And
Right.
so he's pulled out his gun. I don't think he wanted to shoot Holly, but he certainly wanted to defend himself.
Defend
And
himself. Yeah, that makes sense. That totally makes sense.
so he
But
did.
wow. And we've one thing. Did you know in the casting, the American Selznick did not want Orson Welles.
No, he
Apparently,
said he was box office poison. He wanted Robert Mitchum, I think, because he had him under contract.
that's
And
right.
and then there was some talk of having like Jimmy Stewart playing Holly, and
Right.
but once again
Okay.
he wasn't available, and Joseph Cotton was and was still working for Selznick, so that's how that got in. It didn't have anything to do with Wells. I thought it might have, but it was
Right.
just coincidental that he and Wells had worked together before.
And here he is. He's being like cat like. He won't show up. I mean he's kind of a prima donna. And
Yeah, he
yet
was
he
trying to finance his other film, Othello, at the same
Othello,
time.
right?
They had flown him to England to do this, and he used their sets they built for this, and did one of the scenes from Othello and filmed it at their sets, and
That
then was
makes sense. Yes,
going all over Europe trying to get financing for the film, and made him 2 days late to Vienna.
right.
Where he was supposed to be, and they had to use much more, doubles than they were going to in some of the running scenes and things like that. And
And
so the
I
only places
and
he actually was on the Ferris wheel, and in the doorway,
yeah,
and
the
and in the
cafe
cafe, and that was the only places that Wells was in Vienna,
in
with
Vienna. You're right,
and that got on
the
film.
half set was in Britain. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's just in. And apparently he got $100,000, which was a lot of money back then, of course,
Yes.
and used that to partially fund Othello. And but he turned down. He could have had a percentage of the film, and he regretted that to his dying day because he would have made a fortune on having a percentage of the film
Yes.
instead of $100,000. That's
Yeah, I have not seen what kind of what kind of money that film was made for. Usually, they have it down here, and I don't think
yeah.
they talk about that here. But no.
Let's see the oh, and another
Oh, we
thing
need
that
to before we go. We need to talk about Anton Karas.
the music that just hit me too. You're right, exactly. The zither. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
they had attended a usual orchestral soundtrack for this, is my understanding, and Anton Karas was. The company came to Vienna to start shooting, they had a party for them, and Anton Karas was playing the zither, a Austrian instrument, as entertainment for the party,
At a
and
party.
yeah, and so that struck Carol Reed, and he said, would you come in, and we can record one or two of your songs we can use in the film. And at that recording session, it was so good that he sent him to London to record the soundtrack for the entire film. And so he had him write the Third Man theme and some of the other things. And the Third Man theme was basically for every time you saw Orson Welles, they were playing that. And
Ah,
then they had other things which were indicating of the moods that various characters were in. But it made actually the song became a hit before the movie was released, and was played everywhere. And at first, Selznick was against it, but when he first heard the song, he called Hollywood from London, saying, let's get some promotion going for this. This is going to be bigger than anything, and it was.
right. I've heard at some point. I did not know it came from a party. That's
Yeah,
fascinating, and how they found it. But I have heard that at some points, amongst all the disagreements, that all the creators, Selznick constantly wanting to Americanize the film,
yeah,
don't demonize America, and the Carol Reed and Carol Reed
Corda,
and the
Alexander
author.
Corda,
Well, and that's right. And Corda and the author Graham Greene,
Graham
the
Greene. Yeah,
author, they viciously not viciously, but they really disagreed on how the end of the film. On the end of the film, the only thing that pulled everybody together was that music. It at some point, and at some point, the music. Sometimes I think Selznick at some point was so frustrated, almost wanted to cut it off, but everybody was so moved by the music, they felt like it somehow the music just kept the thing going, some point of agreement. And the
yeah.
end is fascinating. The
It
end,
is.
like you mentioned,
He gets out, and Calloway says, you're just being silly, and he says, well, I have a silly name, and then parks
and this
himself
is the
next to
real
this.
this is the
Yeah,
real funeral for Harry.
yeah,
Backing up just a hair, it's now we've got the real funeral for Harry Lime, and at this funeral, nobody seems to care that he that he's dead. Only Anna maybe have some feelings for him.
right. He gets out of the Jeep so he can, because they've already passed Anna in the road, and Calloway goes ahead and drives away, and Holly's standing next to the ox cart, and she walks by him without paying him the least bit of attention, and
Right.
He lights up a cigarette, which apparently Joseph Cotton just did because he thought that they'd yelled cut and they hadn't. They left that part in the film, and it fits the whole mood of the thing.
And Graham Greene,
I kind of like to think that it's kind of a vague ending that he hasn't finished with her.
That it's completely ambiguous, like so much of the rest of the film, and but Graham Greene, the author of the novelette, he feels like for 10 years he felt like that she should go over to Holly and they should embrace and become a couple, and is a happy ending. And Carol Reed said, nope, 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 we're not going to do that. She's got to walk forward. She doesn't even notice him. Right. And it really is stunning to see a film end that way. Films do not end that way, and no happy ending.
Not American films, no.
And 10 years later, Graham Greene finally said, yep, you were right. This is the way the film should end. Ambiguity. She walks forward. And there's some articles that say she becomes the third man, a third way for Europe to define their own future. She's not going to be Americanized. She's not going to the Russian sector. But oh man, and the cigarette is perfect. I hadn't heard about that. It's perfect. Apparently, the one thing I had heard about that last shot is Carol Reed, for all his certainty of saying this has got to be the way it ends, he didn't know when to cut, so he would run versions of that ending. Basically, it's just the same shot. It's just one shot. He's dropped off the Jeep. She walks toward the camera, but where do you cut it? It's a long take. It's a long shot. And so apparently he decided to keep going until Holly finally lights that cigarette.
Yeah.
But
what a film. And we recommend that everybody sees it, and you should be able to find it. It's on YouTube. It's a Criterion Collection film that's on YouTube, The Third Man, and it is the critically acclaimed edition, which was the English edition of it. And it is 11 minutes longer than the American film. It's been restored to 1080 resolution. So it's a treat to watch for its cinematography, its lighting, and its multi-leveled story. So anyway, that's what we were talking about today. Thank you, for being with us once again. This is a very important film, and I'm glad that we were able to talk about it today.
Highlight. I've had a great week, and this is a highlight of the week, as it always is.
Very good. Well, what did we talk about doing next week? We had 2 or 3 that we set up, and I've lost my little list of where we wrote it all down.
Time after time came up.
Time after time, I think, is one of them. So that may be what we talk about. That may be what we talk about next week, but we'll let you know. In the meantime, yes. In the meantime, thank you very much, and thank all of you for joining us. And until next time, don't go far.